A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are in the day second of our 7 days capacity building program on POSH Act. And today we are here. Today we are here, and our resource person for today's session is Dr. Rajput Shraddha. I will briefly introduce Dr. Rajput Shraddha. Dr. Rajput Shraddha is an assistant professor of law
Ibrahim,
at
sir, there's one request I would be doing. I would just tell you I'm a learner and I don't require an introduction for this. Okay, I'm sitting here as a participant who want to learn a lot, sir. So can we just keep my introduction, sir? I can directly start.
Ma'am, just because it's very important that the participants should know the speaker, what speaker has its background. That gives a sense of confidence to the speaker as well as participants are also get interested in that program as well. It's not like anything these are something which you have made ourselves. This is already which you have achieved in your life.
Okay, sir.
So there is nothing false in it. And just to briefly introduce Singh ma'am. So Dr. Shraddha Rajput is an assistant professor of law at Hidayatullah National Law University at New Raipur since 2012. She has 13 years of experience in teaching and has excelled throughout her academics. Dr. Shraddha has qualified UGC NET in 2010, and she is a proud recipient of GD Deshpande Gold Medal for securing first position in her 5-year BLB program. And at last, Dr. Shraddha has been invited by different institutions for POSH training and awareness sessions. And lastly, Dr. Shraddha has recently published her book on women rights and duties. I, along with Dr. Shraddha, today's resource person, welcome all our participants in the day 2 of our 7-day online capacity building program on POSH Act. It's over to you, ma'am, now.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Thank you for the introduction. And good evening, everyone. At the outset, I would like to express my gratitude to Pro Bono Club Kashmir Law College and Pro Bono India, Dr. Kalpesh Gupta, sir, for giving me an opportunity to speak on one of the most essential topics in this program. There are 2 reasons. Before I start, I would share with you, I wanted to be a part of this program in 2 capacities. As I already stated, as a participant and other as a speaker. Because when I say I am a participant, I would learn a lot from these all sessions. As when I come across the issues of sexual harassment, I feel somewhere I have to learn a lot. As whenever we deal with certain cases, whenever we talk about these cases, you know, for a while you can think that I'm knowing most of the things which are related to POSH Act, but when you practically go in that, you face certain issues. So that is one of the major thing I faced. And secondly, as a speaker, I wanted to be a speaker over here because whenever we visit institutes, okay, specifically when we are called to have certain lectures or sessions, you will always see there's a limitation which is brought in for there is an illusion, or you can say if we sensitize people more, there is always a possibility that there will be more flow of cases that may turn in the institution, or there may be certain fake cases which may turn up. So, you know, these are the possibilities we always face whenever we go to speak at different institutions. So what I feel, I have landed up in a proper place, and that is the reason I have an urge to do something in this area. And that was a single reason I talked with Kalpesh sir. Let us go for this thing, because I was knowing he is one of the person who would be doing justice with this particular topic. So if you see today's topic, I just went with, if you see to the title of the today's topic, you will see it is just sexual harassment at workplace and overview. I have not went to an extension of talking about sexual harassment of women at workplace or any other context in regard to this, because I just wanted to bring the word sexual harassment in a different way, not going through the definitions or other part, because you may come across those all definitions when other speakers are going to bring out what exactly the POSH Act is. So wherein when I say I have just used the term sexual harassment, it means I need to trace out how it all started. So my session would focus on this particular line, that how it started. So the next slide. Okay, today we are going to tackle a sensitive and crucial topic. And before I proceed, I just would request you all to be interactive in the session, because that will let me know whether I'm going in a proper way or no. So there's one question which always comes in our mind. Have you or someone you know ever experienced sexual harassment at work? This is my question to participant. They can type in a chat box if they can. Okay. Very nice. I would say I'm getting responses from different people. Either it is yes or it is no. Did you came across anyone who faced in front of you any kind of sexual harassment? This is the second thing which I would ask. Okay, again, I would get a different answer or different aspect of this particular thing. And what exactly we do at that moment? Most of us do not react to it. That is a general saying which I would be talking about. Most of us would not react to it, or few might be reacting. But the question is, how long do they stand? That is one of the major questions when we talk about it. And as soon as I say sexual harassment, there are n number of the acts which flash in our minds. And we collectively start considering different situations which we have came across in these all days. And see, being a female, again, not getting specific in that particular issue, but I would say we come across so many cases which are dealing with this particular points. So I request you to change the slide. Kalpesh sir? Kalpesh sir, can you just change the slide?
And it is on slide number 2.
Sir, I require slide number 3.
Just to say we know about POSH Act, is it sufficient? वही है ना?
Just say we know about the POSH Act. Is it sufficient? That is the next slide, sir.
Slides open abhi now.
Sir, the slide previous to this. Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Now?
No issue, sir. I would be getting to that other slide. Yes, sir.
Abhi theek hai
Yes,
abhi?
sir. Yes, it is visible, sir. Just
Okay.
to say we know about the POSH Act, is it sufficient? That is my question to you. Sitting over here, we come across one particular thing that I'm knowing most of the things which are related to POSH Act, okay? But that is not sufficient. As the recent incident we come across about the body of a doctor raped and murdered on duty. I'm talking about the incident of RG Kar Medical Hospital in Calcutta. She had a multiple injury marks suggesting violent assault, and the victim was a postgraduate trainee of chest medicine and was on night duty when the incident have taken place. I brought this incident specifically because yesterday I saw most of the participants, or few of you have just highlighted this issue, and I thought it's better to speak about it at this moment. And this incident is a stark reminder of the social norms we live with and the behavior we often overlook. Many individuals who engage in minor or inappropriate actions can proceed to more serious offenses if we backed up by a culture that turns to be or we turn to have a blind eye overall. So when we talk about this thing, it's very important for us to question ourselves. Just to say we know about POSH Act, is it sufficient? Why? Because when you talk about such act, you need to have two perspectives in dealing with the act. So my next slide. As with the changing scenario, we have seen more and more women are participating in workforce equally as per men. We have experienced in different fields, women are coming and they are giving their best. So the onus on us stands to be much broader than what we have been thinking all these years. Again, we won't limit ourselves from the perspective of men or women. I would be very specific about this thing. Whenever we talk about such issues, whenever we talk about this particular act, our perspective should not rest on these two words, that is men or women, or any of the thing that is related in this context. So we have to be broader in our thinking and tackling the issues which are emerging with regard to such situations. So we, as individuals, to sensitize ourselves. And when you talk about introspecting, at this moment, it is really required to again lead for one question. Are we heading to the right direction in all these years? I request the participant to just answer this question. Are we heading to right direction in all these years when we talk about the act? I continue with the same. Are we deviating from the law? Okay, I have got good number of responses with regard to this. Very nice. I'm so happy at least you are participating with this form. Now, the next thing which I would be taking into consideration is, so next slide. See, we have heard the word sexual harassment so many times, which is now associated with an act. As soon as I say sexual harassment, I always come across two major things. It might be Vishakha's case, or it might be a word that is related to POSH. But I hope that generally when I talk about it, I say most of you might be knowing, but when we specifically talk about the word sexual harassment, do you know how it really started? That is my question. So next slide. Okay, Aruna ma'am, you have raised your hand. Do you want to say something? Okay, I would proceed further with the next slide. What can history bring to our understanding of sexual harassment? That is one of the major questions. And if you're observing, the law is not reaching to the specified objectives which are brought in. At such time, we can take many of the things which are related to this point. Okay, we can talk about n number of the things which are related in this context. And one of the point which we say that law is not reaching to the objective is history. So it's very important for us to understand how the word sexual harassment have been taken into consideration. So the practice of sexual harassment in century, when we talk about it, is having an old existence. At least when we talk about the word sexual harassment. If we define sexual harassment as unwanted sexual relation, unwanted sexual relations which are related in this particular context, which are imposed by superiors on subordinates at work. So that is one of the major things which we say whenever we talk about the word sexual harassment. So take an example when sexual coercion was an entrenched feature at chattel slavery ensured or brought in by American and African women without protection of law. So that was one of the incident which we can trace out by saying that yes, this was something which was related or similar to the word sexual harassment. While there were crucial differences in the situation of free women who were employed in domestic services that too commonly face sexual advances by men of the household in which they worked. So sexual harassment, when we talk about it, it's a social practice. And when we say it's a social practice, it have lives, institutional lives and semiotic lives. When we talk about both the lives, that is institutional and semiotic life, we can say social practices like sexual harassment has history. Considering sexual harassment in a historical perspective allows us to ask some fundamental questions about the nature of the practice of a law the term in which it has been contested, and the rules by which law constrains or enables the conduct in question. So now you can understand why I am stressing that it is important for us to know what does the term sexual harassment means. And that is the reason why the word which I talked about is sexual harassment at workplace, an overview. Why? Because I'm going to touch all those things which we really set aside whenever we talk about an important issue, that is sexual harassment. And when we talk about the laws at both the level, okay, when we talk about the law at both the level, national and international level, we see that efforts to take out sexual harassment again fall less. Why? Because there's no single meaning of what constitutes prohibited act. So one needs to work on this particular line. First of all, whenever we want to talk about such thing that is sexual harassment. And now, if you see, there is a timeline which I have been talking about before 1970s and after 1970s. Taking both the things into consideration, I will be speaking about international developments and I will be talking about the national developments. Now, before 1970, we find Helen Chappell, 1887, a report on women wage work invoking the common understanding about the household services has become synonymous with the worst degradation that came to women. This was one of the major things which she has talked about. So whenever we talk about this particular point, Chappell also described it in some detailed forms of sexual extortion practices upon women who worked in the factories and the garment industries. So the word sexual harassment was not being used to such acts. Nobody used the word sexual harassment for any such offenses or towards women in the society. In any case, the conduct of such sort was related to offenses against women, which prevailed in society, and that was a proof that such conduct was present in the society. So when you talk about this particular point, we will come to a major thing. That is what, when prevailed in society, there are the proofs of the presence of such conduct which may be found in the records, or you can say stories, or the article and the books about women and work. And additionally, you will also get the lawful records which are related to this particular context. So here, when we talk about it, few researchers have started to look at sexual harassment for occurrences of some sort of practices that are presently being called as sexual harassment. And sexual harassment in association has a long past, but we say a short history. Why? Because as reported in historical records, since the appearance of industrial transformation have drawn somewhere the expansive quantities of women who work outside the home. And it was just recently when we started talking about this social issue. As of late, the effect of sexual harassment has turned out to be progressively well documented when we talk about after 70s. Now, when I talk about the period after 1970s, then sexual harassment law arose first and foremost from the women acting as a part of a social movement, speaking about their own experiences as women at work. So you will get here activists, you will be talking about different women who supported the concept of feminism also. Like legal activist Catherine McKinnon is generally credited with creating the law surrounding the sexual harassment in the US with her book, which was entitled as Sexual Harassment of Working Women in the year 1979. So whenever we talk about sexual harassment, Catherine McKinnon is one of the person we always refer in development of the sexual harassment laws in US. So she used the term that appeared in 1973 report about discrimination called Saturn's Ring by Mary Roth. She referred this particular word in her PhD, that too in the context of sexual harassment. Okay. At that time, Roe was special assistant to the president and the chancellor for women and work at the Institute of Technology. So due to her effort in the institute, the university was one of the first university which developed the scientific policies and procedures which aimed at stopping sexual harassment. So, you can see this one particular point, which is very much recognized, that whenever we talk about the development of this term sexual harassment, again, it comes from a university. Okay. So Rowe said that harassment of women in the workplace was being discussed in women groups in university prior to 1970s also. And one name I feel that should not be forgotten whenever we talk about sexual harassment. At Cornell University, instructor Lynn Fairley discovered that women in a discussion group repeatedly described being fired or quitting a job because they were harassed and intimidated by the men. She, with her colleague, used the term sexual harassment to describe the problem and generate interest in a speak out in May 1975. I say Lynn Fairley when we talk about, she is having a special place whenever we talk about the history of sexual harassment or the word or the concept when it got developed. She later described the sexual harassment at length in 1975 when she gave a testimony before the New York City Human Rights Commission. And the same thing was quoted by Susan Brown Miller, who was a journalist, in her book, Our Times Memoir of the Revolution. And the woman has cited here one thing which really made all the public activists to look at this particular aspect in a very different way. There was a lady called as Carmita Dickerson. She was 44 years old, a single mother who has been harassed by a faculty member at Cornell Department. So, this was something which really attracted the attention of the people on this particular issue, that was sexual harassment. At this point, you will see Fairley wrote a book, Sexual Shakedowns, the sexual harassment at women on the job. And this became a point we all were introduced with the sexual harassment all through the workplace. And the term sexual harassment itself grew a consciousness. And that is the reason why we say whenever we talk about the term sexual harassment, it is an all-inclusive issue and it has been considered worldwide. So this is one of the major things you will be finding as a part of the development which took place with regard to the concept we are talking about, sexual harassment. Now, let us come to the Indian context whenever we talk about sexual harassment at workplace. Now, when we talk about India, we saw some concerns about sexual harassment at workplace. It remains central concern of the women movements in India since early 80s. So, the glimpse of whatever development were taking place in the world, okay, we could have a reflection of those things in India also. And that was the reason why we say whenever we try to trace out exactly, okay, whenever we try to talk about this particular thing that is with regard to the development that has taken place in concern with 1980s, we quote here certain things which are related in this context. We talk about specific things like militant actions, okay, which were brought in by Forum Against Oppression of Women, against sexual harassment, specifically with regard to the nurses. And the sexual harassment of these nurses were done by the male relatives, ward boys, and other hospital staff members. So that was one of the points which really attracted the attention of majority of the people who were related with this particular context. And not only this thing, after that, we get a series of the complaints of air hostesses by their colleagues and passengers who were being sexually harassed. Then the teacher by their colleagues, principals and management representative, and then PhD students by their guides. And so on, you can see that this was one of the major things which was brought into accord. So whenever we talk about such things which are related in this particular context, the response to this thing was much more taken by the women activists and major people who were relating to the context that were talking about such issues, like media somewhere focused that, yes, the acts need certain kind of attention. But again, when we talk about it, the women activists never went back with regard to whatever development were taking place. So When we talk about a systematic action against sexual harassment, that was an urge for which they completely were. There is one more incident which we can bring in as a part of this development is Bali Chanjo Saath. It was a woman voice in a room mobilized public opinion against the chief minister who allegedly harassed his secretary through demonstrations, through rallies and sitting-ins. Okay, that was a movement which was taken in till the time the chief minister was forced to resign. So in 1990s, there were some organizations also which filed the PIL to bring amendments in the antiquated rape laws that defined rape in a very narrow sense. So that was one of the major incident we can trace out whenever we talk about sexual harassment and how the word really got considered when we talk in the Indian context. Now, several women came forward supporting a new concern that was about variety of sexual violence which was seen against the women, including sexual harassment at workplace. So when we talk about this, it gives us a clear idea about whatever have taken place till now with regard to sexual harassment. So I request you to bring a next slide. Kalpesh sir, can we move to the next slide?
Yes. This is, I think, Rupan Dev Bajaj. Next slide. Karnal.
Sir, it is, yes, sir, Rupan Dev Bajaj. Yes, sir.
So I think, वही slide, same slide.
Okay, at my end, it is not showing, sir. So I just...
कौन सा दिख रहा slide आपकी तरफ से?
Okay, now there are certain complaints which are taken into consideration whenever we talk about the sexual harassment. And not exactly the term, again, I say, was brought into practice or it has been brought into a court. So now coming to the four major incidences. Yesterday, sir has talked about one of the incident, that is Rupan Dev Bajaj and IAS in Chandigarh against KPS Gill. I would be adding few more incidences to this part. Whenever we talk about an activist from All India Democratic Women's Association against the environment ministers in Dehradun. Second incident I would bring again here is about an air hostess against her colleague, Mahesh Kumar Lala in Mumbai, and IAS officer in Trivandrum against the state minister. So whenever you talk about these incidences, you will come to know that we just quote Rupan Dev Bajaj as the first incident which talked about it. Surely that was the first incident, but after that we get a series of incidents which were brought in. And one more thing which can be noted over here, which has been brought in by sir also yesterday, before the introduction of the POSH law, there was no statutory remedy that directly addressed workplace sexual harassment except IPC, and that only few sections talked about it. So when we refer section 354 and 509, we come across something that was related with this particular point. So women who were sexually harassed at workplace had to go to the police and file a proper complaint. And when we talk about the particular case, that is Rupan Dev Bajaj versus KPS Gill, you will find that the application of IPC have been taken into consideration, and based upon that, we found that there was a gap with regard to the law, which was very apparent and which was one of the issues that we would have taken further when we talk about the reforms in sexual harassment, which was obviously taken into account. Now see, there's one statement. Sir, can you just change the slide? You know, in the words of Maya Angelou, she has quoted a beautiful statement: each time a woman stands up for herself without knowing it possibly, without claiming it, she stands up for all women. You know, a statement I personally feel carries too much weight when we talk about it. If a woman is standing for herself, okay, where you will see she's not knowing that possibly she would be there, or she's not claiming about anything, but when she stands for all women. She becomes a face of all women. And that is the reason why we say when we talk about sexual harassment laws, we should take the initiative whenever we try to bring such kind of things. And so next slide, please. And one of such women we came across was Bhavri Devi, who refused to give up her fight for justice. And it was her case which resulted in bringing a law which we are talking about. We are sitting here and discussing about, that is sexual harassment at the workplace. Formulation of the guidelines were based on this particular case by the Supreme Court, taking different issues into consideration. Now, when I talk about this, I would be a bit specific in talking about Bhavri Devi, because I know most of you as faculties might be knowing in detail what exactly happened with this particular case, or how we came across uh, with regard to this particular point. Okay, but I wish to shed some light with regard to what exactly this case is about, because we limit ourselves in reading to the pointers which we get or which are available on the net. So let us go a bit deep with this particular case. Bhavri Devi was from Bhetari village in Jaipur, and there is an incident which she has been giving as a part of a documentary which she gave to BBC, where you will see she has pointed out it in a very elaborative manner with few memories which she could really recollect talking about the incident. Now, see, what was it? It was a dusk. Bhavri Devi and her husband were working in field, and suddenly 5 men started beating her husband with the sticks, and she went to help her husband, pleading the men that they should show some mercy on Bhavri Devi and her husband. But the two of the attackers pinned her husband down, and the three others took the turn to rape Bhavri Devi. The attackers were butchers, the affluent and dominant caste group in the village. And Bhavri Devi and her husband belonged to a community called as Kumhar. Okay, for me, it is very important. Why? Because still here, everybody is knowing the way she traveled to the Supreme Court and all other cases. But we leave certain threads, and we know, or we should know, how a woman struggled to reach to a justice. And when she struggles, you will find that there are n number of hurdles which she faced from everywhere. Okay, from every factor that she talked about. Okay, she was stopped in entering the arena of justice. And that is the reason why I'm going to minutely bring the things which happened with Bhavri Devi. Now, the men were very much angry with her act, wherein she was trying to prevent a marriage of a Gujjar girl before few months. The girl was of 9 months. If you read through other literature which is available on the net, you will find that there are different numbers, okay, of the age which have been provided. But the girl was 9 months old. Bhavri Devi has worked as a Sathi from the state government under Women Development Program since 1985. Her job involved going door to door in the village campaigning against social ills. She would tell women about the hygiene, family planning, the benefit of sending daughters to the school, and she would discourage female feticide or dowry and child marriages. So, Bhavri Devi herself was a lady who got married in the age of 5. And her husband was around 8 years. So you can understand the way she took the particular thing. She was one who have suffered a lot. So her campaign against child marriage was not somewhere a campaign against the patriarchy or the fight against the feudal mindset, we would say. But she was just doing her job. For me, it is really important to bring this particular line over here, because we should understand it's not about patriarchy. It is about a person suffering certain things and trying to seek a justice. And she knew that if she would meddle with the affairs of Gujars, she could obviously invite a backlash. And the same thing was reported by her to her officials, that the people were too strong, too dangerous, and they will come after her. But as it was stated by the officials that they have to stop the marriage by any means, and that was the reason they sent the policeman to stop the wedding. But what was the result of that? He just had a sweet in the marriage and he left that particular place. So her family accused her of humiliating them and still managed with certain major people standing strongly with the Gujars, they managed to marry off the baby next day. So the anger, which was not seen, okay, they came after Bhavri Devi when this marriage got over. When she went public with her complaint, she was accused of lying. Her attackers denied that there was any rape which took place, but they just said it was a quarrel which was there. The police again treated her with derisions. Okay, they did not take her complaint seriously and they botched the investigation. So her medical test, if you talk about, it was conducted 52 hours later when it should have been done within 24 hours. So her scratches, bruises were not recorded. Her complaint of physical discomfort was also ignored. So can you understand a woman going through all these things when she's struggling to get her justice is really worth of thinking when we talk about Bhavri Devi. After local newspaper reported Bhavri Devi's plight and protest by the women activists, the case was afterwards handed to CBI. And you'll see the 5 accused were finally arrested more than after a year when the crime was committed and were charged with harassment, assault, conspiracy, and gang rape. So things did not got over there. There was a downhill with regard to Bhavri Devi from that particular point. Over the course of trial, you would see the judges which came on the bench, they were changed 5 times. And at the end, the accused were acquitted of rape. Instead, they were found guilty of very lesser offenses like assault and conspiracy and were all given just 9 months jail. So the judgment really had a massive effect or outrage of the people. Sir, can you just change the next slides? I just wanted to bring out what was really brought in when we talk about Bhavri Devi. See, at the end, when the case reached to Supreme Court, you will see the number of the judges. I have specifically mentioned F.S. Nariman, again representing as an amicus curiae of the court with the other 2 ladies advocate or senior advocates, and Meenakshi Arora and Ms. Naina Kapoor also supported the court with regard to all those things which were taken into consideration to deal with this case. We have come across a line where we see that provisions, we always talk about 14, 21, 91, 19, 1G were taken into account, but beside that, there were n number of the provisions from the constitution we read whenever we talk about Vishakha's case. And you would see here that the provisions which we have referred are 42 and 51, 51A and E, and 253 also we read with 7th schedule, that is union list entry, again with regard to 14, and we also talked about Article 73. Okay, mentioning of this provision really leads us to see how broader the court was when talking about this aspect of sexual harassment. And with this, you will also see that there were certain statements and the principles of independence of judiciary which were referred from Beijing's statements, wherein it talked about how the independent judiciary can keep its foot whenever there will be a gap with regard to things that are troubling the society. So you will find over here that there were a number of the international documents or literature which were taken into consideration whenever we talk about Vishakha's case. And the judgment, when it created a great kind or immense kind of outrage in India, massive protests were brought in Jaipur and 1,000 people marching on through the city streets demanding for justice. And there we see a Jaipur-based NGO, Vishakha, came on to join Bhavri Devi in her battle or in her struggle to achieve justice. So whenever we talk about it, we always take these things into account. So next slide, please. You can see here what were all things going on whenever we talk about this particular moment. So next slide, please. Now, when we come to a particular thing that is talking about the Vishakha guidelines, okay? But before I turn to that, there are certain things I need to mention. You know, the judgments which were brought in by the trial courts were really considered to be bizarre for certain reasons. Why? Because there were n number of the statements made in that particular case where it was stated that the village head cannot rape. Men of different caste cannot rape a woman from a lower caste because the question is of their purity. The elder men of 60 to 70 age cannot rape. So you can see what was the way in which the court dealt this case at the subordinate levels. And then in 1997, the top court came with the Vishaka guidelines. Again, external, laying down the norms for the protection of women for sexual harassment in workplace. So it was a revolutionary judgment based on the fundamental rights of women, and the guidelines later became the basis of the act, that is 2013, by again taking into consideration different aspects regarding to this. Okay, so when we talk about these guidelines, these are all guidelines. Again, I would mention one thing: I'm not going through the guidelines because I wish that there should be no overlapping with the things that were taken as a part of 2013 act. So I would just I have mentioned these guidelines and we can have a look to these guidelines. So next slide. There were around 12 guidelines which were provided, and there were certain things which were taken into account, wherein taking the time to consideration, I want to bring out what exactly was the aftermath of this judgment, which will lead us to come to a particular state where we really brought a law in that particular context. Because I feel somewhere directly jumping from Vishaka's case to 2013 is something what we usually do. But you know, meanwhile, when we talk about this particular span, we need to keep in mind that n number of things which took place because the time span when the judgment came and the act came is a longer period. So that is the reason why I feel that the Vishaka case and the aftermath is very important when we study this thing. Why? Because it started with implementation and enforcement of Vishaka guidelines. So next slide, please. Okay, so when we talk about it, okay, initially the implementation of Vishaka guideline was uneven and it was inconsistent across various sectors. As we know, whenever we are trying with certain new laws, we always face such kind of problem. And that too, we were talking about guidelines and not the legislation. So many organizations were either unaware of the guidelines or they choose to ignore them, okay, due to the lack of the concrete enforcement mechanism. And that was again a new thing that was brought into account. So however, if you will see, several public interest litigation and increased activism from the women rights organization led to have a significant shift in accepting these particular guidelines. So when we talk about corporate sector response, larger corporations and multinational companies were very quicker in adopting the Vishaka guidelines, integrating them into their corporate policies. So they established internal complaint committee and they conducted awareness programs for their employees. The same thing when you talk about, we have brought public sector and government compliance. So government department and public sector undertaking began to set up complaints committee and they started framing up their own sexual harassment policies. And the pace of implementation, however, when we talk about, varied significantly across different states and departments. Okay, so somewhere this got a very good response and some states were again reluctant to bring these guidelines as a part of their policies. And when we talked about the educational institution, you will see universities and colleges also began setting up complaint committees. So the UGC played a very vital role by issuing directives to ensure the compliance with the guidelines. And we can see till now, we see that UGC is really participating in these all programs in a very good way. Okay, so when we talk about this thing, so next slide, please. Next slide, when we talk about these all things, we also need to see what were the initiatives taken by the government against sexual harassment at workplace. So, you know, there is a platform that is called as SheBox platform. Most of you might be knowing about this thing, I'm sure. The sexual harassment electronic box that is called as SheBox is an effort of the Ministry of Women and Child Development, Government of India, to provide a single window access to every woman, irrespective of her work status, whether working in an organized or unorganized sector, private or a public sector, to facilitate the registration of complaints regarding to sexual harassment. So any woman who who is facing sexual harassment at workplace can register their complaint directly through the portal www.shebox.nic.in. Okay, I say please take note of this thing. Sometimes we hesitate to reach to the authority with regard to this kind of issues, so we can directly bring a complaint through this particular medium. So once a complaint is submitted to the Shebox, it will be directly sent to the concerned authority having jurisdiction to take actions into these matters. So when we talk about this, again, there were certain implant institutions or resource person where the government have ensured the safety and security of women at all workplaces. The Indian Ministry of Women and Child Development started impaneling institution, organization willing to conduct awareness, rising exercises around the provision that were related to sexual harassment. But again, you will find that they were more active when the act came into force. Okay, so the in-panel institutes had their own programs. They collaborated with this Shebox project, and we can see that there was a major shift which was brought in regard to this. Now, I also want to bring out a 1998 incident that was about formulation of a code of conduct for workplace by the National Commission for Women to secure justice for women, safeguarding their rights and promote empowerment. So this was again pursued with various central ministries department, and the effort to promote the well-being of all women employees at the workplace was formulated in the form of conduct for workplace. So putting down the Vishaka guidelines given by the Supreme Court in a very simple language so that they can reach to maximum people, and in accordance with those directives by the Supreme Court, they can be widely, okay, amongst all the central ministries and government departments, including all state commissions for women. So NGOs also and other bodies which were related to corporate sectors. So NCW published the Vishaka guidelines again, taking an initiative to hold meetings regularly. Or you can see they have seen or they implemented certain programs where they studied about the problems which were faced in by various organizations in dealing with the complaints of sexual harassment. So such kind of meetings were again bringing an exchange of experiences with various organizations, and of the organization, like around 800 plus organization attended these meetings during those particular span of time, that is 3 years period. This is one thing which we talk about whenever we talk about NCW. But after that, there were two major cases which we would take into consideration. So can you just change the slide? So can you just change the slide? Kalpesh sir?
Yes, yes, slide number 16 पे है. The Supreme Court photo
Okay,
is
sir.
there.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. I got it. Okay, so when we talk about it, there are two major things which I need to mention, two major cases. Again, I won't be going with the facts of the cases and ruling and everything because you would be dealing these case laws in our next session. So I don't wish that they should be repetitive, but I will mention them because when I talk about the aftermath, it is very important for us to talk about these two cases. One, Apparel Export Promotion Council versus A.K. Chopra's case. And the second case which we are talking about is Medha Kutwal Lele versus Union of India. So when we talk about the first case, again, the first case stands to be very important because this was a case which came in front of the Supreme Court as after the Vishaka's case. Okay, so when we talk about this case, special mentioning really is taken into consideration. Why? Because whenever we talk about this case, in this judgment, the Supreme Court has talked about enlarging the definition of sexual harassment by ruling that physical contact was not essentially for it to amount to an act of sexual harassment. Okay, so this was a major change which we really saw as a part of this thing. And even the Supreme Court went to the extent of explaining that sexual harassment is a form of sex discrimination, which is projected to unwelcoming sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and other verbal or physical conduct with sexual overtones. You would be getting all these things as a part of the POSH Act. Okay, so that, for me, mentioning this case is very important. And the second case which we talk about is about Medha Kotwal Lele, where you will see several petitions were filed before the Supreme Court by the NGOs on the basis of note prepared, which was stating one thing, that even after Vishakha's guideline, the atrocities against the women were not stopped. Okay, so the Supreme Court treated the petition as a writ petition filed in the public interest, and it took the cognizance of this particular thing, and it undertook the monitoring of the mechanism that would implement Vishakha's guideline across the country by directing the state government to file different affidavits emphasizing on the step that should be taken for implementing Vishakha guidelines. So, in this judgment, the apex court observed the implementation of Vishakha guidelines. Okay, so that is one of the major things which we should appreciate whenever after the that is the reason why I say aftermath of Vishakha's case is brought in a very different way, wherein we look that Supreme Court tried its level best to fill the gaps wherever it felt that something was lacking. So, not satisfied with the implementation of Vishakha guidelines, it directed the state to put the effort to place a sufficient mechanism. Finally, if you see, it opened to the aggrieved person to approach to the respective high courts if the non-compliance of the Vishakha guideline was brought in. Okay, so that was also one of the welcoming act which was taken into consideration. So, the apex court also directed that complaints committee, okay, the role of the committee, what should be the major things that should be brought in. And one of the things which we really take into account is that the inquiry authority for the purpose of Central Civil Rules 1964 and the report of complaint committee will be deemed to be an inquiry report under those rules. That was one of the major things which was directed in this particular case. And the industrial employment standing rules, okay, they were also amended by saying that they should take a cognizance of whatever is happening. So, these are certain things which we really see after Vishakha's case. So next slide, please. Now, again, when it comes to timeline, I always feel that it's very important for us to trace this timeline, because that is a period where you will see the development with regard to POSH Act. It is grounded based upon this line. I generally start with the first thing which I say, that is prohibiting the child marriages. Okay, the initiative which was taken in the form of the act somewhere late to bring 1992, that is Bhauri Devi, the incident that took place. Second, 1997, we have a landmark movement arriving where the court is going, or Supreme Court talked about the Vishakha guidelines. So these were certain things which were really taken into account. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court, while talking about the guidelines, have also stated the government of India by requesting National Commission for Women to draft a legislation. Okay, so the number of the issues were raised regarding to NCW draft because again, the data which they could collect, the compilation which they could bring in, okay, that was not brought up to the level. And that was the reason why you will see ultimately we talked about a drafting committee which was set up to make a fresh draft. Okay, so you can understand where that time was brought in. Okay, why it took so many years after Vishakha to bring a law. Now, several women organizations became the part of this committee. Specifically, we mentioned Majlis from Mumbai, which was asked to make the draft, and women organization and women lawyers associated with trade unions in Mumbai collectively worked on drafting these particular things. Particularly concern was seen with regard to working out a draft that has been included or that should include the unorganized sector and to incorporate provisions of labor law. So the bill was introduced in the parliament, and that afterwards we came to know as a sexual harassment of women at the workplace prevention and redressal bill. And in 2003, there is again a mentioning of one thing. The Andhra Pradesh Women's Commission releases a report of sexual harassment at workplace, revealing that significant majority of women have encountered sexual harassment in some or the other form. So the Supreme Court of India in 2006 again broadens that definition of sexual harassment and encompassing quid pro quo harassment and hostile work environment harassment. Okay, With that, in 2007, we see draft protection of women against sexual harassment at workplace bill was approved. And 2008, the National Commission for Women published a report on sexual harassment in educational institutions, shedding some light on the substantial numbers of the female students facing sexual harassment by their teachers and the staff members. So 2010, the bill was introduced in Lok Sabha. Again, the amendment in the bill were after the amendments, the bill was reintroduced in 2012. On September 3, 2012, the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Prevention, Prohibition and Redressal Bill 2012 was passed by the Lok Sabha. Then 2013 is a timeline again which we take into consideration. Why? Because the bill was passed by the Rajya Sabha, and on April 23, 2013, President gave its assent to the POSH Act, and the same was published in the Gazette under Act number 14 of 2013. So the Indian Ministry of Women and Child Development notified this thing, and it made the effective date of POSH Act and POSH rules which were brought into accord. So the scope of including domestic workers was again brought into accord. 2018 stands to be one of the period where we talk more about Me Too movements that sweep across the country, inspiring numerous women to bravely share their experiences of sexual harassment and assault. So this movement not only raised the awareness about sexual harassment, but it also extended the pressure on the employees to proactively prevent the and address the issues that were related to sexual harassment at workplace. So, when we talk about all this thing, we can come across 2021. The Ministry of Women and Child Development releases certain guidelines for implementing POSH Act in educational institutions, reinforcing the importance of safeguarding and whatever harassment-free learning environment we can provide on this particularly. So, these were certain developments which we really trace whenever we talk about these points. Yes, sir, you can move to the next slide. At the end, when we talk about, there are certain challenges and persistent issues which are dealing with this act. Okay, whenever we talk about it, I thought I would be discussing them because it's very important. When we start from a history, I should touch the present, what we are working on. So despite progress made, several challenges still are persisting, and the effective implementation of the law is not brought in the way as it should have been brought in. So when we talk about it, awareness and training, so many organizations still lack adequate awareness and training programs. So this is a result in lack of understanding of what constitutes sexual harassment and the processes for addressing it. This is one thing which I personally also feel that whenever you talk about awareness and training programs, we lack somewhere very far. Why? Because we feel that, okay, this is a topic which has been talked in more, and this is a topic where we don't know how the people are going to react. Okay, so something stops us from bringing such kind of awareness and training programs. And even though when I want to speak, I'm not able to speak because I lack with the training. Okay, so that is one of the major problem. Then underreporting. Okay, yesterday we have seen different reasons. Okay, where you will see that even after a redressal mechanism, we will see that significant underreporting of incident takes place. Victims often prefer to remain silent rather than facing the potential career setbacks or public scrutiny. Okay, so that is one of the major reasons. So for this, I personally believe that there should be certain mechanism where we can make the women feel free to talk about these all issues that are there, and they should come forward with these all things which can be brought in a very proper way. Now, effectiveness of IC and LCCs, you will again see in some cases committees are not constituted as per guidelines, and in certain colleges which I have seen, the requirement for formation of committee is not fulfilled. Why? Because you will see the requirement whenever we will be dealing with this topic in different sessions, you will see that becomes one of the major cause wherein people don't want to go for this, or even though if they are willing to go for this, they don't have the proper members who to constitute as a part of committee. So you will see a lack of transparency, and again when it comes to proceedings, okay, impartiality is required whenever you talk about this thing. So external members are sometimes not adequately trained or experienced, so that is the reason I always say this thing whenever somebody comes with this issue. Madam, आपको पता है कि institution में ऐसा हो गया है, अब मैं क्या करूं? You get this kind of things to listen from the people who are a part of a committee, and rather than the person against whom a sexual harassment has been brought in, we feel that the members themselves are facing difficulties in talking about this particular issues. Okay, so small and informal workplaces, whenever we talk about such workplaces, compliance of the major issue again remains very far. Many small businesses and informal sector employees are either unaware of the law or they even choose to ignore such kind of laws. Okay, so leaving many women unprotected in this sector. So somewhere it is a time or it is a need to build certain thing with regard to this point. And when we talk about judicial backlog, cases of sexual harassment often face delay in the judicial system, leading to prolonged trauma for the victims and delayed justice. I have met certain victims where you will see, for them, getting justice is a priority. And when this period is long, you can understand the trauma through which they go. Okay, you can understand the mental state of mind. It takes years together to come from that particular phase. So once or while, whenever we come across these people, you can understand very well what are the things which are faced by them. So unfortunately, sexual harassment is a reality that many of us face. Okay, but the major thing what we can bring it out here is something very different. Now see, I need to add a few points which are relating to this issue also. As I have a few minutes left, I will just highlight in short that whenever we talk about ensuring that there should be a safe and respectful workplace for all women in the society, I say that enhancing the awareness campaigns. Okay, this is one initiative which have been taken by us to deal with these all things. Okay, there should be major initiatives which should be brought in whenever we talk about these particular issues of sexual harassment. So somewhere we can enhance awareness campaigns. And see, I would tell you one more thing over here. If others are not doing, why should I? Okay, so I say we need to come away from this mentality. If we start, obviously there would be a number of the people who are joining in this context. If I sit here and if I say I'm knowing everything about this particular act, I say I stop my growth and development with regard to what I can take in this particular form. So if I am knowing, it's my duty that, or it is my obligation that I will make others aware of and sensitize about this thing, because awareness is again one issue and sensitizing ourselves with regard to something is again a different level where you can work in. So regular training should be brought in by conducting training sessions for all employees. And for this, I say that training is very much required, because if I am trained, I can train others. But if I'm lacking with the training, then I cannot come or give training to other person. Okay, so this is also one of the thing. Wherever I go in institution, people say, ma'am, you are from a law university, can you just arrange something which is like a workshop or which is like a training programs? And if we talk about other training programs which we can seek in personally, you can understand what is the fee that has been charged. Okay, it's around 25 to 30,000. So this is one of the things which we should work on, that there should be regular trainings and we should train more people to handle such kind of cases. Okay, then redressal mechanism, again there would be a special session on this particular thing, so I won't be again talking much more about it. But one more thing I will be telling you, we should support the victim. Okay, providing support services like counseling or legal aid or protection to the victim is one of the things that should be encouraged in a very broader way. And when we come forward with this particular point, we see that there are a number of reports which can, or incidences which can be brought in front of us when we provide such kind of support to the victims. And informal sectors, again, we should focus on these sectors, special attention. When we talk about it, we should try to implement certain laws in these areas. And there should be a targeted intervention with regard to this thing to support most of the women regardlessly of their employment status. Okay, they should be protected only on one line, that they are women. Okay, so that is one of the major thing which we can bring out whenever we talk about such developments. So next slide. So next slide. Okay, So there's one message I would be saying, and I would wind up my session with regard to this thing. Okay. You can just have a read to the statement which has been added over here. And with that, I say sexual harassment is a serious issue, but it is not inevitable. By understanding what it is, its impact, and how to prevent it, we can create a safer and more respectful workplace. Remember, we all have a role to play in a society in preventing sexual harassment. We all owe something towards the society. And before I conclude over here, I want to leave you with a question, because I started with the question: what will you do differently tomorrow to help to prevent sexual harassment in your workplace? And that is only one thing I let you people think on, and that is one of the major points based on which I would be talking in this. Okay, thank you everyone, and I would really love to have certain questions with regard to this session.
Thank you. Participant, you can drop your question in the chat box or you can raise your hand. So we'll starting with Amrita Anand. Over to you.
So there are few questions. I will just have a look to those questions. Calling her. She is flat and chest.
Hello, ma'am. It was an awesome session. But one question that, time and again comes to my mind is, we are in an era where we are talking about gender neutrality. Then I feel that POSH is somehow or somewhere it's biased. So I just want to know what is your opinion on this?
Ma'am, see, what I feel, I still say, Amrita ma'am, we should talk about this progressive state, okay? When we achieve the aims for which an act has been come. Okay, if you go through data, I'm not saying this as just to say, okay, if you go through the data which we are collecting through different institutions, you will find we are still lacking far behind from what we would have achieved. Okay, that is the first thing I would be telling. And second, I think most of you may not agree with what I say. Again, I say I believe on the facts and data which are shared. And second thing is what? Yes, there is a time, no doubt, that there should be major changes which should be introduced as a part of this act. Okay, so we are at that particular urge, okay, that there should be a change. It should not be gender centric in nature. Okay, so that is one thing which I am also talking about. And let us see now the case or the incident which have taken place may bring certain major changes with regard to this act, and we can hope something better in this context. See, sir, there is a question from Dr. Varsha. I have observed one image following a flat-chested, very thin girl, calling her that she belongs to his category as she is flat-chested. Can we say that is the sexual harassment? How can we help? Yes, ma'am. Whatever comments are coming through this thing, in other sessions also you will be very clear with regard to this point. But yes, we can help that girl by telling her that yes, what are the consequences or how she should deal with that particular issue by following the things which are provided as a part of this act. Okay, see, I told you, I got one thing, that is all do not believe in gender neutrality. That is what has been taken into account. Okay, so yes, we can land up with this thing also. I told you there might be different opinions when it comes to describing what law is or talking about what law is. Okay, are there any questions? Let me check it out. Okay, some organizations are used to believe in gender neutrality and are used to mention that particular point in their policy. Yes, this is also one thing which we can see that some institutions have changed their policies and they have taken all the cognizance of these things which are brought in. What are the precautionary measures can take to reduce sexual harassment cases? I just told you that proper implementation of the law. Sometimes it is stated, everyone is knowing that how the complaint or how the redressal mechanism will work on. Okay, so that is one of the major things I would be working or I would be talking on. Okay, if we are very strict in bringing the things, I say this is going to reduce the sexual harassment cases. Okay, but what is there? We have that kind of lethargic attitude. Okay, we are not able to do this thing. How we are going to proceed further? So that was the reason I winded up my lecture by telling what exactly I wish that should be brought in. Comfort to the person against whom such cases are drawn in. People hesitate like anything to bring such kind of cases. Okay, I will talk, surely ma'am, I will share my PPT also if you, with you. Kalpesh sir, I don't have any objection. You can share the PPT. I'll be happy if I would be contributing this much with regard to this initiative. Okay,
Perfect.
so rather than summary, I would be giving you my this only PPT.
Sure. Participant, I think keep some question with him, but maybe it will be answered in the upcoming session because with some question we can say it's related to maybe okay. How can we create awareness for women belongs to unorganized
See,
sector?
I have already dealt with that particular thing. See, what happens if management and inquiry commission is hand in glove to dilute the cases of sexual harassment? Again, I say we have a number of mechanism which would be dealt by Krishna ma'am, and I think she would be properly bringing the things rather than I going and telling you, yes, these are the specific redressal mechanism. We can, as a college head, what we can do out of box. Okay, if you ask me this question, then I would just tell you we can be a part of such programs. We can train ourselves. We can have more broader perspective with regard to this thing, and we can contribute from our side. Okay, that is the reason we all are here. Okay, barring aside the academic compulsion which makes us sit here, I feel that there are most of the people who really want to know what act is or what law is. Okay, so that I feel as a college head, we should encourage such kind of programs. We should participate in such kind of programs. Regular trainings can be brought in, and that can really bring a change with regard to this point. Ma'am,
Participant.
there are many cases where females are threatened if they want to take legal action against the harassment. Yes, that is the thing I was talking about, that law has really not reached to the way it would have reached. Okay, so I also see a number of the cases. I have seen a number of the cases where you will see that females are not coming forward. Okay, why? Because they are threatened with regard to the major actions or repercussions which they may face in that context. So yes, we need to work on this thing. We need to talk about it. How can we, just there is one more question, how can we create awareness for women belonging to unorganized sector? Yes, that's the best thing. I always tell my students whenever we need to create a awareness in this particular area, I always tell them you can have a skits, you can have a play which will really convey the message to this sector in a very broader way. And whenever you talk about literacy, that is also one of the issues why you will see at a remote level we are not able to reach out with this particular ad. So in these cases, there can be some initiatives which can be brought on this line. Madam, can I know something with regard to most recent moment? Okay, I know something with regard to internet change on every hearing. Okay, when we talk about this, again, the quorum cannot be changed. That is what I have taken into account. But again, I'll say when we will deal with redressal mechanism, that would be a proper thing which can be brought in. And say RG case, please give your view on it as its most recent issue at moment. Yes, whatever happened is not good. Okay, I would just say this is where we are lacking. There was a word which I have used, semiotic living, and I have used one more word, that is social norms. Okay, when it comes to a public behavior, now it's a time that we should think on this particular line. Okay, every person is not a culprit. Somebody turns to that level because he's lacking with these norms. Okay, so it's a time where we should think, we should try to bring this particular point into account. Yes, mental harassment is coming under it. The one section says that IC shall prepare the annual report and submit it to the employer, and says that the employer should include information in, and both sections are contradictory and confusing. No, both of them have their own ambit to bring out the things. Okay, and reporting the cases and submitting is again a very good issue where accountancy and accountability and transparency can be brought at this level. Okay, so that is one thing which I would be talking. I hope that I have taken most of the questions which are in chat box, sir.
Yeah, sister, definitely. If you answer more, otherwise we have to end program today itself. So we.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. No. If you take up more questions, that we have to end up program today itself because there is no need of further session.
Again, is there any So there are two more questions. I think it will keep on flowing. Is there any particular certificate mandated in law to conduct POSH training? No, there is no certificate. But again, if you are trained this thing, then the impact is different. So we always say that you should have a kind of a training which will be really making you aware of this thing. But there is no compulsion of having a certificate. But people go by that because you know that there are few people who are giving training by taking huge amount of money as far as is concerned.
Also. So, I think, ma'am, we
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
conclude. Yeah. Thank you very much, madam, for your insightful session. You again set the tone for the legal and the other the cases, the related aspect for the upcoming session. So I request Dr. Krishna Mehta to give a vote of thanks to Dr. Shraddha.
Yes.
Over to you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Shraddha Rajput, for wonderful session. I'm also one of the speaker. I will be addressing your questions of redressal on 15th of October. But we thank each and every participant for being proactive in terms of chat messages, asking questions. Please be the same audience, and through you, maybe we can create a strong framework of creating awareness. We also thank Dr. Kalpesh Gupta, sir, for initiating this capacity building program. Tomorrow, we will again see you for the topic which is going to be taken by Dr. Sangeeta Roy Mitra. Topic is understanding the POSH Act, the need of the hour. And I'm sure whatever questions you are asking in terms of workplace sexual harassment, what is the difference between that? Can quorum be changed, etc.? Many of your questions will be addressed tomorrow as well. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, and have a lovely night. Good night ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.